As a runner for the entirety of my life so far, I can tell you that it's been an overwhelmingly joyous process. But it's not without its darker side, a side that mentally and physically is avoidable if you know how. So we're going to tell you how we avoid the darker sides of running and find the pure joy in it all.
Darker side that I'm not proud of, but in the spirit of this video and open and honesty, I'm sharing because these things happen in the early days of running for me. But I'm really proud that I've worked through it as a person, because at the end of the day, we're human, right? We're going to make mistakes. But one thing I'm not proud of ever having done as a runner is casting judgment on other runners. The fact is, in the early days when you want to give yourself a little boost, it is very easy to fall in the trap of looking at someone else and thinking, oh, well, they're bigger than me, they're slower than me, they're not wearing as good clothing as me. But we don't know the background of any other runner other than ourselves. So if you look at everybody going past me this morning, I have no idea what their situation is, whether it's their first run ever, whether they're regular runners. It could have taken a monumental effort on anyone's part just to get out of bed this morning and make this run happen, first or not. And that is actually something that needs to be celebrated rather than judged. Let me tell you a story. Okay, possibly mistimed this because this is going to be the punchier part of my run, but there was a route that Mary and I used to run all of the time, the same route, and a lot of the time when we were on that route, there was a guy running in the opposite direction, and he was in really basic running clothes, and every time he saw us, he literally just shut down. If he could have hidden, he would have moved himself back into the hedge just to get out of our way and not be seen. He was like a young adult. You could tell very much it was his first time attempting to run, and he just didn't want to be judged. So rather than be judged, he just stopped running whenever he saw anybody else, even other people walking past. But his running roots weren't strong in the ground yet, so any little setback like feeling of judgment or negative comment could well have knocked him out of running. So what we did was we flagged him down. I had to stop because there's no way I'm going to be able to tell that story at that pace. So when I say we flagged him down, he was coming past us one time. We were running one way, he was running the other way, he stopped. So we stopped and we just initiated a conversation about how brilliant it is what he's doing, how long has he been running. And he was just telling us his story about how he got going. He really wants to get healthier through COVID, and this is the start of his journey. So we celebrated that with him, and we told him what he's doing we think is amazing. And you could see the mood change in his face. You could see that it meant something. And you know what? Every time we saw him after then, he smiled, he was still out running. He still looked nervous, but he didn't stop when we were there. And we've got to celebrate that, because being judgmental, it only really serves us, and it doesn't really serve us in a very good way anyway. Our job as runners, all of us, is to be out there celebrating other runners and inspiring other runners. I'm going to leave you, I couldn't film during that, but it was too hard. I'm going to leave you with a quote I learned in the early days of my running journey that has really resonated with me and really inspired me, and that is, a candle loses none of its flame by lighting another candle. And I take that to mean, go out and celebrate the world, celebrate the runners, everybody you see. It takes nothing away from you to big another person up, and actually just creates more candles, if you get the analogy.
Now, we know this is a hard one to master, and we've spoken about it on the channel at length before, but not being able to get up for training because of low motivation plagues all of us at times. But here's the thing, relying on motivation at all is the error. I very rarely am motivated to train, so if I relied on that motivation, I doubt I'd hit many sessions in a week. In fact, I've had to put myself through a process to create the discipline I need to make the runs happen. Step 1 in the early days was to set my intentions. I would have a plan for the week and for the session. It would be written down and I'd know when and where I was going to do it, which led me to step 2, which was to make it then easy to carry out. I already knew time and place, but I'd have clothes ready and I'd have shoes sorted, and I'd generally set the session during movement moments, as I call them, which is to say, as soon as I got up or as I came in from work or at another point where I'm already moving. Step 3 was to create opportunity for victory. I mean, super early, just making it to the door ready to go was the win for me, and then as time progressed I used the 10-minute rule to allow myself to quit guilt-free after 10 minutes. I never did, by the way. And over time I simply fell so deep into these behaviours that they became habit, a thoughtless process. It just happens. And if you're still not there yet, then try this. I know with absolute certainty that I'm going to feel better after my run, 100% guaranteed. So if making the run happen is still difficult, then just knowing what it feels like on the other side should be the final push that you need. But essentially, if it needs to happen, then I make it happen. There is no thought involved, and I'm not going to let the dark side win. I'm going to rely on my discipline, not my motivation.
And one of the darker sides of running that I'm not even proud to admit that I've been anywhere near is begrudging other people or having jealous feelings. I mean, it's kind of like comparison's uglier cousin, right? And actually I count myself very fortunate to have never had these feelings of begrudging or jealousy towards another runner, per se. But I have had these feelings very slightly, and it's outside of running, so I need to tell you a story. You see, for me it came in the form of another YouTuber, and while I won't say in any way that this was feelings of begrudging, it certainly was pangs of jealousy when Mark Lewis first blew up on YouTube, and has since turned his channel into a behemoth. What I found difficult was that he just blew past me like I wasn't moving, and whereas I had a bigger channel a year ago, he is now 3 times the size of this messy happy. And maybe for just a few days I had a bit of a pity party. Why him, not me? But here's the thing, and here's how it relates back to running. First of all, you don't know how much graft Mark has put in behind the scenes. But more importantly than that, there is space on this platform for everyone. I've spoken to Mark. I know he's a good dude. Those fleeting moments of jealousy are long gone, and I am celebrating what he is doing for the fitness and running community in the same way that I would hope that he's celebrating other people. So even if you started in the same place as someone else on your running journey and they've gone much faster past you, celebrate that. Don't be jealous. We're all on our own journey, and here's the thing to remember. For the most part, all runners want to do, all YouTubers want to do, is inspire you and help you to be better. And that's got to be celebrated. Ultimately, jealousy, begrudging, those are the type of emotions that are so ugly, and they're just not fit for people like all of us, runners, trying to be better. So celebrate everyone and everything, because we're all on our own journey. And go and subscribe to Mark. I'm going to watch his latest video absolutely right now.
When I discovered my local park.
Alright, put your hands up if you've ever been here, because I certainly have, and that is using running as a punishment rather than a reward. I would imagine that somewhere along your running journey, whether that be short or long, you have used running as a form of self-punishment. You might not have even realised, you see, because I think there are probably 3 or 4 different ways that that can happen. But again, as always with all of these points, the light is at the end of the tunnel. I have the solutions as well. I suppose the most direct example of doing this is you do something silly in the day, you say something silly, you have a bad day at work, you make a mistake, so you decide to get home and you go for a run to punish yourself, to feel that kind of Hurt Locker style pain. And that is bonkers, by the way, but I've been there. And the thing is, as soon as you start attaching the negatives to a run, like, oh, I run because I need to punish myself sometimes, that's quite hard to unpick. What about this slightly more indirect method of using running as a punishment? And that's when you know that you're injured and you still go out and you do it. It might not be you in your brain thinking, I need to punish myself, but it is punishing the body, because knowingly pushing through something that will eventually stop you running, it just doesn't seem the right thing to do, and yet we do it. I've done it. We do it lots. And the solution to this one is as simple as zooming out, looking at that one session. Is that one session of training worth potentially risking days, weeks, or even months out because you pushed through an injury? So take a step back, evaluate, and think, is this one run worth it? Yes or no? If you're injured, usually it's no. And this one's totally the most subtle, hardest to spot, but is definitely worth noting, and that is intentionally overtraining, whether that be in a particular session when you're supposed to take it easy and you go too hard, or whether that is actually longer term, consistently overtraining in every session. And that sometimes has got nothing to do with running at all. So I'm not suggesting that there's an easy fix for this one. Certainly it's not easy, but I would suggest that you start opening up, talking to people you trust, maybe even going to find a professional and talk to and work it through if you feel like that this could be something that you are prone to. Because it is nothing to be ashamed of. It's all just part of the process of being the best you and fulfilling your potential. Look, I know these are hard subjects to tackle, but I'm a firm believer in that we should tackle them because it's worth talking about, and if it starts a conversation either on YouTube or away from YouTube and it helps one person, it's all worth it. So let's crack on.
Now I know this darker side is going to test all of us at some stage on our running journey, and it is our approach to injury. I mean, the fact is, at some point in our running journey, we're gonna get injured. And I guess there's probably two overriding reactions to an initial injury. First one being, it's over, wallow in self-pity, I can't believe this, I've trained for this, I cannot believe this has happened. Those kinds of emotions. The second reaction is, okay, I'm injured, this sucks, but what can I do to pick this apart, to treat it like a puzzle, to make sure I can come back fitter, stronger, and not get injured in the same way? This is now a game. Then everything you do from that point stems from the initial reaction and how you've trained your mind to work when setbacks occur. I mean, hands up, my first significant injury, which was a prolapse disc in my back, put me out of running and triathlon for 8 months, and actually, I gave up. I pretty much threw in the towel. Mary will very honestly tell you that I was just a terrible person to live with at that time. I felt grey, I had nothing, and I thought I was never going to get out of it. And it was because my initial reaction to the injury was like, this is it, over. I'm done. But since then on this channel I've had a few injuries that I've documented for all of you to see, like the injury in the lead up to the London Marathon that I had and how I tackled that, the injury I had in the lead up to the Seville Marathon, the injury I had last summer with my back. These are all injuries that I've picked up, but I've approached them in a different way, like a puzzle to solve so I can come back stronger. And actually, even when I got hit by the car, I was looking for ways to solve the issue of not being able to train by finding other ways to train. So particularly when you start in running and maybe you pick up your first injury, you could be forgiven for having yourself a big old pity party like I did, but with just a tweak of how you approach it and turning it into an interesting puzzle, a game, because essentially that's what the body is, it's a puzzle, and you've got to constantly try and figure it out to keep yourself in running. Then you no longer look at injuries as setbacks, you look at them as opportunities. A darker side that is a constant battle for most of us most of the time is the battle with our own ego. Hello. For the purposes of this, I am the ego. Yeah, well, why don't you explain some of the ways you try to affect our running? No worries, I've got this. So, I like to push hard because to me, pushing hard makes me feel like we're making progress in every run. So, despite knowing that a lot of our training should be easy, you get us to push harder because pushing harder feels like we're making more progress, rather than we are making more progress. Correct. Seems a bit silly. Okay, what else? I also feel like the way that we train is good and the progress that we make is okay. So when other people offer me opinions on running, I just politely nod and don't listen at all. But what if they have a way that might work for you that could be better? Better than what I know? Yes, exactly. But it works for us, so how can it be better? Hang on, are you just saying you don't like having what you believe challenged? Yes, exactly right. Right. So, as I see it, you're stopping me from reaching my full potential by giving me an inflated sense of self-importance. And I just don't think that works for me as a person or as a runner. But, no but, bye-bye. The thing is, I suppose, for me is that the ego has no place in running to a certain extent. Humility is where it's at. All you've got to do is look all the way to Eliud Kipchoge to realise that humility is the way forward. The first big step is understanding that the more you know, the more you realise you don't know, but also understanding that so many people have valued opinions. And yeah, of course, every now and then you have to sift through a little bit of the dodgy information, but most of the time, people want to help and they've got good knowledge. So it's in your best interest to listen to it. For me, the ego has no place in running, so kick it to the curb. Thanks for watching. I hope this video brought you some value. I know it was a tough topic to tackle. That was actually hard to say, but I'm really hopeful that it helped you in some way, because I really believe you can't just share the highs, you have to share the lows. Without the yin, there's no yang, so you've got to have the lows to have the highs. But if you liked the video, consider subscribing, and you're definitely also going to like this video, which is the best body shape for a runner, and I guarantee you it's not what you think it is. Thanks for watching, see you Sunday.